Welcome, everybody, to the Sentinel Report. I am your host, Alex Newman, just back from Belém, Brazil, after the UN Climate Summit. It is November 24th, 2025, a beautiful day that the Lord has made. We learned a lot in Brazil. We've got a lot of coverage over at thenewamerican.com, and so I hope you'll go check all of that out. Got a lot for you today as well, folks. Our brothers and sisters being ruthlessly persecuted in Nigeria, but finally, the government of the United States, at least, is saying something about it. So praise the Lord for that. And also the link between vaccines and autism, long dismissed by the medical establishment as a crazy conspiracy theory. Well, now it's on the official CDC website that they are taking a look. Joining us later in the program is Dr. Andy Wakefield, the man who first proposed and published a study on the link between autism and vaccines. Boy, has he been vindicated despite all the ruthless persecution. We also have Jackson Lahmeyer joining us from the White House Faith Office, and Dede Laugesen from Save the Persecuted Christians. So stay tuned for all that and more. We'll start with, like we always do, with a word from the Word. This comes out of Ephesians chapter 6, verses 12 and 13. The Apostle Paul, with the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, writes to the church at Ephesus, "For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. Therefore," the Bible says, "put on the full armor of God, so that when the day of evil comes, you may be able to stand your ground, and after you have done everything, to stand." Folks, I use these verses constantly in my talks. If you've ever been to any of my talks or heard any of them online, you know I always remind people this is a battle against spiritual evil, against the demonic, against the fallen angels, against Satan and his minions. And it's not necessarily against bad people. The Bible says many of them have been taken captive by Satan to do his will. And that just became so clear to us in Brazil as we were covering this so-called climate summit. So I want to share all of that with you and much more. Before we get into our news segment, though, folks, I do want to encourage you to consider gold and silver in your portfolio. I've been buying it since I was in college. Very glad that I have, not because I think it's necessarily an investment per se, but because it holds its value. And, you know, the Bible talks about unequal weights and measures being an abomination to the Lord. There's actually a new book about this by Alan Armstrong. It's called The Bible and Gold. The reality is, since Eden, gold has always served as God's honest money. It's a standard that cannot be manipulated, much less printed away by central bankers. And so we're very pleased to partner with our friends at Genesis Gold Group. They have a mission that perfectly aligns with these biblical insights on finance. They've actually built the foundation of their company on the same principles of honest money, transparency, and integrity that are explored in this important book by Alan Armstrong. Their faith-driven experts can help you transform these paper promises into physical precious metals and help preserve your retirement against the very devaluation that Armstrong talks about in terms of all this money printing. So if you go to newmanfaithgold.com, newmanfaithgold.com, you can actually get a free copy of this book, folks, The Bible and Gold, over at newmanfaithgold.com. You get a free copy of the book, The Bible and Gold. I want to encourage you to read it. It's about how you can align your financial future with the unchanging standards of gold and silver that we read about throughout the scriptures. And so that's all at newmanfaithgold.com. Again, honest money for uncertain times. You get a free copy of that book, The Bible and Gold. So go check it out at newmanfaithgold.com. Now, going to the news, ladies and gentlemen, as I mentioned, we just got back from Brazil. Andrew Muller, contributor to the New American, also chief of operations here at Liberty Sentinel Media, joined me along with our mutual friend, Debbie Bacigalupi, who was on with us last week from there, if you caught last week's episode. Andrew, welcome to the program. Thanks for being with us.
It's great to be here, Alex. Thanks.
Absolutely. Before we get to the news, Andrew, what was your takeaway? This is the second one of these that I've been going to them for over 15 years. This is your second COP, as they say, climate or Conference of the Parties, the UN Climate Summit. What was your 50,000-foot view of what we saw in Brazil at this UN Climate Summit?
Yeah, I think it's probably very similar to yours, Alex, which is that when you are an American in America watching these events, if you watch the reporting at all, I think a lot of the coverage we see is just look at these jet-setting hypocrites. They come and they want to critique fossil fuels and get rid of them and move towards green energy. And they say climate change is going to destroy humanity. And yet they drive in these fancy limousines and fly on these planes. They're wasting our money. They're just grifters. But what we saw at COP30 was actually a deeper truth. which is that this is a spiritual battle we're engaging with. That these people at the United Nations, they are actually working to achieve a satanic agenda item. And I say it's satanic because it's contrary to God's design, and it's globalism. God created nations, sovereign nations, and what the UN's trying to do through this climate change agenda, it's not building more solar fields or building more wind turbines. It's actually to bring about what they'd call multilateralism, which is globalism. And that was on display with everything we saw. And I think that's the takeaway, that we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against rulers and principalities and spiritual agents. And that was on full display.
Yeah, speaking of that all being on full display, Andrew, the official guardian spirit of the UN Climate Summit, a demonic dragon jaguar spirit. Folks, I want you to look at this picture. If you're watching us, look at this picture. If I had to make up a demonic statue to try to encapsulate this whole agenda, I could not have done a better job than this. If you're listening to us on the radio or hearing us on a podcast, I'll try to describe for you this horrific creature, horrific statue that was donated by the Chinese Communist Party to Brazil to be the guardian spirit of the UN Climate Summit, the Amazon rainforest, and Brazil. They called it a jaguar dragon guardian spirit. But it's a little bit more than a dragon jaguar. If you look at it carefully, it also has elements of a man. It has a man's body. It has human hands holding the world in its hands. But it also has devil horns. I mean, I don't know what else you can call those besides devil horns on top. It's got fangs, ruthless fangs. And really fascinating. As this was unveiled as the official guardian spirit of the UN Climate Summit, a lot of Brazil, Brazil is, of course, a Catholic country. They're famous for that big, giant statue, Christ the Redeemer, on top of Mount Corcovado in Rio de Janeiro, which used to be their capital. The Brazilian Christians said, no, get that thing out of here. Brazil belongs to Jesus Christ, not your demonic jaguar guardian spirit. But truly incredible that they would put this on display. And they were very touchy about criticism on this, but really, I think it illustrates perfectly what we're dealing with here. The Bible repeatedly makes reference to the world being in the power of the evil one, is what you'll read in 1 John. It talks about Satan being the god of this world, the god of this age. And boy, did that statue sum it all up perfectly. Also, very interesting, the very next day after this thing was unveiled, we went over to go check it out. We had the COP30 venue catch on fire. If you saw anything about the UN Climate Summit, you might have noticed this. I hear you actually see Andrew interviewing a guy about a nasty Trump statue, and then suddenly, out of the blue, you see their black smoke billowing out of the Climate Summit. Andrew, fascinating. I mean, you were interviewing this artist who made this disgusting Trump figure. You were interviewing him when that happened. What was your takeaway on the chaos and everything we saw there?
Yeah, I mean, I think Thursday was just a biblical day for us. I mean, we started off and going and seeing this dragon guardian spirit. The Chinese guards that were there saw us. They started taking videos, pictures, didn't like our reporting. We then go to the COP. They have this horrible statue of Trump, which I have a 3D printed version of here, naked on the back of a child. We're interviewing the creator of this statue. Then the COP goes up in flames behind us. It starts thundering. I mean, it just felt very biblical that God was there and his judgment was apparent. So the COP catching on fire, a lot of people are saying it's symbolic. I sure think it is, of this black smoke, this fog over the COP. Of course, they use fossil fuels through fire trucks and fire extinguishers to put out the fire. So that was a little ironic. They say it was an electrical fire somewhere near the Chinese booth. And they have not said what the full story is behind that fire, nor do I think they will. But it was very eventful. And that day on Thursday, when we went and saw that statue, came back, saw the Trump statue, then the COP catches on fire, then starts thundering and lightning, makes you really wonder, is God there judging the United Nations? I think so.
Yeah, they like to make their little plans, and we see in Psalm 2, God laughing at the kings of the earth, at the rulers of the world conspiring against him. He's literally laughing at them. He's going to terrify them in his wrath. That's what Psalm 2 says. It's just a fascinating story. Now, very ironically, misinformation and disinformation was a major topic of this conference. In fact, governments got together. We reported last week on this. Governments got together and signed a declaration and agreement on pollution in the information ecosystem. And of course, they all agree they're going to go after misinformation. And they actually did an article about misinformation surrounding the fire. And sure enough, they picked up a tweet from yours truly, from little old me. And they claimed that my tweet was an example of misinformation. And you know how they claimed that? By attaching another tweet that had nothing to do with me to my tweet, as if it were all coming from me, which of course it was not. I did report on the demonic guardian dragon spirit. Everything I reported was accurate, and they never claimed otherwise. But then they claimed that I had, in that same tweet, associated the demonic guardian spirit with the fire, which of course I never actually did. Really amazing. The article was about how misinformation spreads faster than fire. And of course, they used misinformation in their article about misinformation. So this was official agency down in Brazil with financial backing from George Soros. Very, very interesting to see the actual weaponization of misinformation in an alleged attack on misinformation. The Pope was very enthusiastic about this COP30, picking up right. We weren't sure exactly how he was going to do this after Pope Francis, of course, the most significant environmental activist among popes in all of Catholic Church history. But Pope Leo seems to be picking up the baton. I want you to hear the little video he made claiming that the earth is crying out for climate action. Check it out.
I greet the particular churches of the Global South, gathered at the Amazonian Museum of Belém, joining the prophetic voice of my brother cardinals who have taken part in COP30, telling the world with words and gestures that the Amazon region remains a living symbol of creation with an urgent need for care. You chose hope and action over despair, building a global community that works together. This has delivered progress, but not enough. Hope and determination must be renewed, not only in words and aspirations, but also in concrete actions. The creation is crying out in floods, droughts, storms, and relentless heat.
The creation is crying out in floods and storms and whatever. Really interesting remarks there from His Holiness, the Pope. Really interesting because that's exactly what the pagans told us. I actually interviewed a bunch of these native Indians from the Amazon, and I heard that over and over and over again, that Mother Earth is angry at us because of our carbon emissions, and therefore she is going to attack us with hurricanes and floods and droughts and things like this. Really interesting to see the Pope using the same language. And folks, if you've followed our reporting on this, you know that there is a very real effort to bring all the religions of the world together to try to supposedly save the climate from the ravages of carbon dioxide, the gas we exhale. And so you've got the political side of it through the UN, all the governments of the world. You've got the economic side of it through the World Economic Forum, the big companies of the world joining forces on this. And then you've got the religious organizations coming together under the leadership, incidentally, of previously Pope Francis, Bergoglio, and now Pope Leo, to save Mother Earth. And it's become increasingly blatant. They even had the new and improved 10 Commandments a few years ago in Egypt that we reported on from the Sinai Peninsula. They actually walked to the top of Mount Sinai to unveil these things. Truly incredible. Another important thing to mention that you probably didn't see in the fake media in the United States, we mentioned it briefly earlier. They had an art display right outside the entrance, and obviously the UN had to approve this. You couldn't get to this location without permission from the UN. You needed a badge to get by the initial security. And this art piece, so-called, is called The Orange Plague, King of Injustice. You see a very, very fat figure of Trump, obese figure of Trump, standing or sitting on the shoulders of a skeletal worker or child of some sort. And it says he is the king of injustice. He'll do anything to help the guy under him except get down, stand down. Amazing. And I'm just wondering, when are they going to do one on Xi Jinping or Vladimir Putin or North Korean dictator? My guess is we won't see one anytime soon. But you can understand why they're really mad at Trump. In fact, while this conference was going on, Trump suggested that there may be criminal investigations of some people involved in a conspiracy to promote carbon climate hysteria. Listen.
Everything was a new scam, green, green, green. Look, I'm all for the environmental everything. I'm all for climate change. You know, they have new word, climate change. It used to be global warming. It's global warming. Well, that didn't work because it started coming down. They did the global cooling thing. Then they just said, we can't keep up with this. It's too much. So we'll go, perfect words, climate change. They're covered. If it rains, if it snows, if it's warm, it's climate change is destroying the world. Remember? The world was supposed to have been gone 2 years ago. They gave us 12 years, Howard, to live, right? 12 years. But that was 14 years ago. The world was going to burn up, but it got actually much cooler. These people, it's a little conspiracy out there. We have to investigate them immediately. They probably are being investigated.
Probably are being investigated. No, I guess we'll see. But boy, they do not like people talking about these things. In fact, one of the big topics, misinformation and the need to silence it. Here's one of the UN bigwigs talking about this very issue. Charlotte Scadden. First I should say, we talked to the State Department. The State Department sent us the message you see on your screen about why they were not going to be attending. They said that there was no official U.S. delegation. They said the Trump administration refused to use taxpayer dollars to send or facilitate any official travel for this conference, which is dedicated to hamstringing the American economy and bankrupting the American people. Of course, it is. But I want to show you what these people are doing while the United States was conspicuously absent. They're plotting censorship of not just the internet, but of you. Listen.
With all our 193 member states on issues around information integrity and climate action. And just to flag that just over a year ago at the Summit of the Future, member states agreed in the General Assembly to the Path for the Future, which included the Global Digital Compact, which has in it an entire section on commitments to information integrity and to digital trust and safety. So, this is something about which we are, of course, engaging with all member states in all regions, and they have commitments. We are here to help them meet those commitments and offer resources. I mentioned the Global Principles is one. Yes, of course, these discussions are happening globally. And you mentioned state actors. I think the Secretary General has been very clear in his position that we must fight disinformation, we must fight online harassment, we must fight greenwashing, we must fight all attempts in the information ecosystem to undermine climate action, regardless of the actor. So, our position is clear, and I think the responses that we've laid out and that we're pursuing as part of the global initiative really look towards constructive solutions in that regard.
Yeah, constructive solutions. I hope you understood what she was talking about, right? This is the UN advisor on information integrity, talking about censoring state actors, right? President Trump being the 800-pound gorilla in the room. You cannot be allowed to criticize our pseudoscience. And she'll go on. We don't have time to show you all the clips, but she goes on to say it's not just people questioning the science now. Even the people questioning the solutions to the alleged climate crisis need to be silenced and stopped. In other Latin American news, folks, while we were down there, Chile has voted to propel the conservative candidate, Jose Antonio Cast. He's very likely to win the runoff coming up soon, next month, against the far-left communist candidate, Janet Jara. So we'll see what happens, but it would be great if Chile remained in conservative hands. It's been a bastion of conservatism, and it has reaped the rewards of that for generations. But they did elect a communist last time around, Gabriel Boric, who's trying to change the constitution and take them down the route of the rest of Latin America. So grateful for what we're seeing so far in those elections. Meanwhile, over in Brazil, Jair Bolsonaro, the last president who I believe won the election, has now been arrested. He is being held by federal police, and they claim that he was thinking about escaping to the U.S. Embassy to avoid a 27-year prison attempt or sentence for allegedly attempting to overthrow the Brazilian government that, of course, he was leading at the time, folks. They did exactly what they tried to do to President Trump, to Jair Bolsonaro. They have disqualified him from being able to run in the next election, and they're hoping he will die in prison, probably sooner rather than later. So we'll keep you informed on this, folks. It's a terrible injustice being perpetrated by Lula, the president of Brazil, and also his buddy Alexandre de Moraes on the Supreme Court of Brazil. Unbelievable what's happening. Trump did say, that's too bad. I just think it's too bad. We'll see what happens going forward, but this is very, very significant, folks. Jair Bolsonaro was a major threat to the communist movement in Latin America, and as of right now, he appears to have been neutralized, even though he's unbelievably popular. Stay with us. We're going to be right back with more here on the Sentinel Report.
Introducing Perform Light. Perform Light helps support your body's performance from within. This plant-powered electrolyte drink helps you be the power plant that you are meant to be. Unlike most electrolyte products in the market, Perform Light is more than just a sodium, potassium, or magnesium-containing electrolyte formula. It is bioenergetic nutrition. Perform Light has a full spectrum of minerals derived from pure, natural seawater, so the balance of electrolytes in Perform Light is the same that exists in the body, making the nutrient load more bioavailable. In addition, Perform Light contains a blend of 31 powerhouse vegetable and fruit concentrates and herbal extracts rich in bioflavonoids and antioxidants to enhance energy and oxygen utilization naturally without stimulants or sugar. And of course, Perform Light is powered by VNI's proteasome technology for rapid and sustained absorption of its nutrient payload. Better absorbed minerals means more electrolytes to promote the essential electrical functions of cells in your body. Unlock the power of your mitochondria. Harness the energy of your cells. This is nutrition that gets in and energy that comes out. Feel the energy. Be the energy with Perform Light.
Welcome back to the Sentinel Report. Folks, we've been reporting for years right here on this program about the horrific persecution of our brothers and sisters in Nigeria, and of course all over the world, but Nigeria has been especially horrific in recent months and years as Christians are slaughtered by and kidnapped, raped, their churches torched by jihadists. It really is out of control. And the Trump administration has now decided to do something about it. And I think one of the reasons why is the White House Faith Council. Donald Trump has created this institution, and joining us now to discuss is Jackson Lahmeyer. He is a member of the White House Faith Council. He's also the founder of Pastors for Trump. He's a national faith leader. He's a major conservative voice, and he has been working with the president since the beginning. He was actually there when Trump signed the executive order creating this council, and now he plays a role in guiding its spiritual and policy ideas. He's also the co-founder or the founder of Pastors for Trump. This is a nationwide coalition of Christian leaders from all across the country who united in supporting the president's campaign. He's the lead pastor of Sheridan Church in Tulsa, Oklahoma. He's the founder of Sheridan Bible College, and he does so much to mentor the next generation of leaders committed to faith, freedom, and service. Jackson, welcome to the program. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Yeah, Alex, so good to be on with you again. Love all that you're doing. And you brought it up just a second ago about Christians in Nigeria. And thank you for being willing to use your platform because, as you know, CNN, MSNBC, they're never going to talk about this. But it's a massive, massive issue. You know, there's about 2.2 billion Christians in the world, and one out of seven are being persecuted for their Christian faith. And Nigeria is a hotspot for that right now. And very grateful that President Trump has shined a light on this issue because our brothers and our sisters in the Lord are being slaughtered at rates we've never actually seen before. And so President Trump realizes this is a huge problem. And one of the reasons he created the White House Faith Office is to protect religious liberty here in our country, but to also look after other people of faith that are around the globe. And this includes people in Nigeria. And so thank you for having me on. Thank you for being willing to talk about this.
It's an honor and a pleasure, Jackson. I've appreciated your work for a long time, even going back to the Reawaken America tours. You've been on the front lines of this battle for so long. Jackson, talk to us a little bit about the president's thinking, the White House thinking on religious liberty, and also these issues of persecution. Obviously, Nigeria is not alone, but it has taken center stage. Talk to us a little bit about the policies that are coming out of the White House, the way that faith is informing the decision-making here, and what Christians can do beyond just, praying.
Yeah, it's a great question. And so, I think we first have to realize that, like I said, 1 out of every 7 Christians on the globe right now are being persecuted. And it's coming from 2 sources: Islamic countries and communist countries. So Islamic countries like Nigeria, communist countries like China. And so President Trump established the White House Faith Office with the purpose of protecting religious liberty because You know, the old saying is nobody should get in between a person and their doctor. Well, nobody should get in between a person and God either. And
Amen.
so that is one thing that President Trump believes, especially because foundational to our country is religious liberty. And unfortunately, persecution's not just happening in Nigeria. That's the hotspot right now, but it is happening in this country as well. You know, since 2018, attacks on Christian churches has risen over 700%. 700% increase on attacks against churches in the United States of America. Nobody's talking about it. Nobody's talking about what's happening in Nigeria. And so it's good to have a commander in chief who has a platform to shine a light on this, because exposing it is the first step to ending it. So if you don't face it, you can never fix it. That's one of the things the Biden administration refused to do, was face the facts that Christians are being persecuted in America and around the world. Well, President Trump has faced it. He has shined a light upon it. And, you know, he has weighed the options. What does the United States of America need to do in order to solve this? And right now, he has put pressure on Nigeria, but he's also kept on the table that if we have to be involved at a higher level, we will do so. The hope is the president shining a light on it, the president calling it out, the president putting pressure on Nigeria would resolve the issue. But if that doesn't, I'm grateful we have a commander in chief who says we'll go another step. And so, yeah, we have to pray, but I think we also have to use our voices. We all have a sphere of influence. We all have social media. Not everyone has a platform like you, but you are using the platform God's giving you to expose this. And so other believers have social media and posting about it. Pastors on Sunday mornings at church, bring this issue up. Pray for the persecuted church around the world. Those are the things that we can do individually. And then praying for wisdom that our leaders, President Trump and his team, would have the wisdom and discernment of what to do in order to stop the genocide that is happening, not just in Nigeria, but in many other countries as well.
Amen, Jackson. And, this is exactly what the Bible tells us. 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 26 tells us that if one member of the body is suffering, the whole body suffers with it. And folks, just because our brothers and sisters in the Lord are on the other side of the world, they're in Nigeria, the fact that they're suffering should cause us to suffer with them. And I think we have an obligation to, at the very least, speak out and be involved. So, Jackson, thank you for your efforts on that. Now, you also have a new book. I really wanted to talk with you about this. I think your message is so critical. It's called Chasing After the Wind. And you're looking at this ever elusive pursuit of happiness in life. And of course, even a lot of Christians are looking for happiness in all the wrong places. Your book talks about how that relates to holiness. Give us the 50,000-foot view. How should we be pursuing happiness? What does that really look like?
Yeah, well, that's the one thing we're all chasing. Whether you are young, old, black, white, rich, poor, everybody wants to be happy because we're wired and we're designed to be happy. However, we try to find happiness in things, whether that's money, whether that's cars, jewelry, sex, fame, power, whatever it may be. And those things promise happiness and they give us a moment of happiness, but then it dissipates. And so we are constantly chasing, pursuing it. And sometimes the pursuit of happiness leads us into some very unholy decisions. That is why, if you're going to pursue happiness, which you are designed to do, you are designed to pursue it through a relationship with God, who's the happiest being there is. In fact, the Bible describes the presence of God as being the fullness of joy. And it's the joy of the Lord which gives us strength. So how do we withstand in the crazy times that we live right now? You better have strength right now. Your strength comes from the joy of the Lord, which is found in the presence of the Lord. And so it's okay to have money. It's okay to have cars, but those are not where we find our happiness, our peace, our contentment. We find it in our relationship with God. And too many people, they chase the wind their entire lives. Happiness is like the wind. It's elusive. You chase it, but you never really catch it. And so this book is all about how can you catch the wind? How can you actually have true joy, true happiness, true peace in your life? It's possible. It's possible, but it doesn't come through what our culture tells us will make us happy. And so, I think Coach Lou Holtz put it best. He said, if you want to be happy for an hour, go eat a steak. If you want to be happy for a day, go play a round of golf. If you want to be happy for a week, go on a cruise. But if you want to be happy for a lifetime, you got to get to know Jesus. And so this book, I get very practical about how you can have joy and peace and happiness the right way. That's sustaining, lasting. And we're getting great reviews, sir. We're getting great reviews on this book.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. You also address the age-old question about why God would allow suffering and evil in this world. And of course, we know it's going to be for His glory. But I love your use of the story of Job, maybe one of the oldest texts in the Scripture, to show how God can even use suffering to bring us greater joy, greater purpose. Jackson, it's really been an honor and a pleasure to have you on the program. What's the best way for people to get a copy of the book and follow you on social media? How do people get plugged in?
Yeah, well, the book is available Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Walmart, Target. But if you go to my website, jacksonlahmeyer.com, you can get the book for the same price, but you'll get a signed copy as well as the ebook. So you can have the digital and the hard copy. If you go to jacksonlahmeyer.com, I'll sign it, send it your way. But it is available Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all the other places.
Well, Jackson, again, really appreciate you coming on the program. Thank you for the great work you're doing on the White House Faith Council. Please keep up the good work. Keep representing our Lord there in the halls of government, and I hope we can talk to you again very soon.
Thank you, sir.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for joining us. Folks, stay with us. We're going to be right back after this quick message with much more here on the Sentinel Report.
In 1776, a nation was born. Forged in the crucible of revolution, brave men and women stood together fighting for freedom, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Throughout history, the spirit of patriotism has prevailed. The battles may have changed, but the values remain the same. Today, in 2024, we find ourselves at a pivotal moment where the call for unity, freedom, and a better future echoes louder than ever. Introducing Patriot Mobile, the wireless carrier that stands with you. We are committed to supporting the values that make our nation great. With affordable plans and reliable nationwide coverage, Patriot Mobile is not just a wireless service. It's a call to action for those who believe in the American dream. Because this year is not just any year, it's the most important year since our nation's founding. Choose a wireless carrier that shares your values. Choose Patriot Mobile. For free activation, use promo code Newman.
Welcome back to the Sentinel Report. Folks, things are changing very rapidly when it comes to vaccines and public perception of vaccines, and even official narratives when it comes to vaccines. The once unshakable narrative surrounding injections, these vaccines, childhood vaccines, autism, and all the rest of it, appears to be rapidly crumbling. In fact, if you go over to the CDC website right now, you'll find something very interesting, where it once said that the alleged link between autism and vaccines was a crazy conspiracy theorist and misinformation. It now says, and I'm going to quote for you, it says, the claim vaccines do not cause autism is not an evidence-based claim because studies have not ruled out the possibility that infant vaccines cause autism. It says studies supporting a link have been ignored by health authorities, and it says HHS has launched a comprehensive assessment of the causes of autism, including investigations on plausible biologic mechanisms and potential causal links. Today, we have joining us Dr. Andrew Wakefield. He is actually the first medical professional, the first doctor to publish a serious study suggesting a possible link between autisms and vaccines. Andy, it's great to have you on the program. Thank you so much for joining us. Wow. Tell us, what are your thoughts on this? Are you feeling vindicated?
Alex, it's great to be here. We are living in an extraordinary time. I mean, a year ago, I could not have imagined that all of this would have happened. And it's happened because Bobby Kennedy basically is the head of HHS in the current administration, and he has studied this subject for a very long time. He comes to it with an entirely new idea. Let me take you back, if I may, Alex, to the origin of the thinking, what we've been up against for 30 years now. And this is a document. This is from the Federal Register, so a federal document, and it's talking in this setting about polio vaccine and neurological injury. But this really characterizes the perception that public health have brought to bear on this issue for 30 years. Any possible doubts, whether or not well-founded, about the safety of the vaccine cannot be allowed to exist in view of the need to assure that the vaccine continues to be used to the maximum extent consistent with the nation's public health objectives. Science cannot be allowed to exist. That is how extraordinary, and that is untenable. How do you think you can ever preserve that edifice of false belief in the face of not only extensive injury to children, but scientists saying no, doctors saying no, we're going to investigate this because we believe it's real. And here we are, all these years later on, and there's a revolution, a turnaround. I never thought I'd live to see this. I hoped I did. I'm an sort of eternal optimist, but here we are. And I think it's beyond the tipping point. We're now going to uncover the truth. It's going to be a long and painful process, but nonetheless, we are in a much better position than we were when I first spoke to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you really went through hell to try to get this information out. I mean, I don't think I can even put into words what you went through. You were celebrated a physician, author. You graduated as a fellow of the Royal College of Surgeons back in 1985. You were a fellow of the Royal College of Pathologists, and you published over 150 original scientific articles, books, chapters. You were invited to give scientific commentary. And then you stumbled across this apparent link between these injections and autism. And I mean, they took everything from you. I mean, they took your medical license. They took, I mean, all of it, your career, everything. So you went to making films. You made some incredible films, including you co-wrote and directed Vaxxed, From Cover Up to Catastrophe, wonderful movie. You've done a lot of really, really great work. In 2022, you released Infertility, A Diabolical Agenda with Robert Kennedy Jr. So you went into a different line of work, but I mean, they really came after you for that original study. Andy, do you still believe, because I know they came after that study like crazy too, do you still believe what you put in that study? Is that accurate despite all of the attacks on it?
That study is absolutely accurate. Every word in that has been scrutinized and time and again, and it's as true now as it was then. And all of the authors, and this is a crucial thing to say, is that none of the authors have recanted any of the findings, any of the parent stories, any of the findings in the children, any of our conclusions. So that remains. And so the allegation of fraud, now that we're in a new era post-COVID, where we're familiar with the cancel culture, at the time, it didn't exist. And so unfortunately, at the time, it was me against, huge organizations and governments and NGOs and the pharmaceutical industry. And it's easy to be completely overwhelmed. Now we're seeing some of the finest physicians in the country, in the world, being dismissed from their jobs for criticizing the COVID shot and COVID vaccine policy. So now the world is familiar with this, and it's not a surprise that it happened all the way back then. But we're in a different world.
Yeah, we are, and the CDC's own data shows parents have really lost confidence in the narrative surrounding these injections. They're either delaying or refusing a lot of injections. It's truly an extraordinary time, and I think you had a lot to do with that, Andy. Now, you've been involved with a whole bunch of really interesting projects. One that I wanted to mention briefly, our mutual friend Richard House took the lead on this, but it's called Humanizing Science and Medicine, Critical Paradigmatic Conversations. You contributed just one chapter to this book. It started out as a blurb, but it's a very interesting piece of work. It's got contributions from a lot of very well-known people in this space. Talk to us a little bit about this book, Humanizing Science and Medicine. Why did you choose to lend your name to this?
Well, it was an excellent piece of scholarship, and it tried to piece together why we're in the current circumstance that we find ourselves, how science has been perverted, corrupted, misinterpreted, misrepresented. I mean, for example, we talk about the consensus of the experts. Well, dear God, protect us from those experts, because they did so much damage during COVID, and they will not be trusted ever again. But it was really, science is about consensus. No, it isn't. Consensus is the death of science. What you need to do is ask difficult questions in order to answer the questions that have hitherto been unanswerable. So where was the epidemic of autism coming from? We had to answer that question. The response of the experts was to say there is no epidemic of autism. Well, now that is firmly established, and everything that the parents told me all those years ago has turned out to be the truth. Everything that the experts have told me has been false. And this book really characterizes the mindset that led to so much of the false narrative that we're living with now.
Yeah. And Andy, there's been a lot of developments coming very rapidly. The most recent by Del Bigtree. I know you've worked with him in the past. The new movie Inconvenient Study, where this very high-ranking, very well-known doctor at the Ford Health System actually did the study that we've all been hoping to see, comparing vaxxed versus unvaxxed, and the findings were so explosive that they decided not to publish the study. It's very clear that Big Pharma and the medical establishment is not just going to roll over and play dead here. They're going to keep fighting back. Where do you think this goes in the context of COVID? I do agree with you that a lot of people have woken up. We're not buying the narrative anymore. But where do you think Big Pharma and the medical establishment is going to come down? How is this going to go moving forward?
Well, you're absolutely right. They're going to fight tooth and nail to preserve what is a huge, huge marketplace for them. And the other thing is that with the current and ongoing failure of the old vaccines, like the measles, mumps, and rubella live vaccines and others, they are now looking to mRNA-based shots as a future for all childhood vaccines where it's feasible, and that should fill us with absolute horror. Suffice to say that that is a huge marketplace for them, but in the end, the market will win. The market will prevail, and the market is the consumer. And the consumer has had enough. When I got involved in this, Alex, originally a handful of people worldwide were prepared to engage in a thorny debate about the safety of vaccines. It was safe and effective, and that's it. Now it's half the adult population of the world, after the films that have been made, the stories that have been told, and now our experience with COVID. Half the adult population of the world are saying, no, stop. There's a problem. We're not going to comply with what you've demanded of us because we no longer trust you. So I think we're beyond the tipping point, but certainly in the end, the market is going to prevail. The market will win. You cannot force people to inject things into their bodies and the bodies of their children in the face of the prevailing evidence.
Yeah, amen. And actually, I'm living in ground zero right now for that very discussion. Our state here in Florida is working on ending the mandates that we inject our children with all kinds of injections to be able to send them to school. And I do believe your work has been a major factor in bringing about this awareness. In fact, the last time you and I spoke, Andy, was about your movie 1986 that you released in 2020 about that law purporting to give total immunity to all the vaccine manufacturers of these childhood vaccines. I mean, it seems like incredible that in 5 years we have seen such a rapid shift in public opinion and everything that's going on. We're almost out of time, Andy, but I do want to ask you, got an upcoming project that you and I talked about a little bit in the break. It's called The Bequest. You've got a new film that you're working on. Tell us about it. When can people see it? Where can people see it? How can people see it?
Well, the film has been so important, so impactful for changing minds. You can change millions of people's minds in a very short space of time with a well-made movie. And this is a story about as I say, we're beyond the tipping point for the change in vaccines policy and our understanding of adverse reactions. But what I want to make sure is that those who have been injured, the children who are left on the battlefield in man's quest to conquer infectious disease, are not left behind. And there are many, many, many of them. Families whose lives have been overturned, destroyed by this. And so this is a story about a mother's love for her child and the extent to which she's prepared to go to protect him because their greatest fear is that when parents become infirm or die, what will happen to my child? There's no one who cares for them or understands them or loves them, and they will die on the street if nothing is done. And so it's a film that really focuses upon that. So if there's anyone out there, Alex, any of your listeners who want to get involved in such a film, we'd love to hear from them.
What's the best way to do that, Andy? Is there a website, a social media? Where can people follow you?
The best place to go to is our website, info@wakefieldmediagroup.com. So the website is wakefieldmediagroup, one word.com. And if you send an email to info@wakefieldmediagroup.com, you can get hold of us.
wakefieldmediagroup.com. Folks, go check it out. Andy Wakefield, thank you very much for all your work all these years. I know it wasn't easy, but humanity owes you a great debt of gratitude. So thank you for standing firm. Thank you for sounding the alarm all those years ago. And thank you for the work you're still doing today. It's been a great honor and a privilege to have you on the program.
Thank you so much, Alex.
Thank you, sir. All right, folks, stay with us. We got one more segment here on the Sentinel Report. We'll be right back.
Hello, everyone. I'm excited to announce the next generation of energy drinks, Rev 7. It has no sugar and no caffeine. Instead, Rev 7 uses Go BHB. Go BHB is one of the body's primary ketones, and it provides the most efficient and clean fuel that your body needs. It also helps you stay energized all day with no crashes. Not only that, it produces 3 times more brain energy than sugar, which helps boost your memory, focus, and mental sharpness. It also helps reduce stress and helps balance your mood. Rev 7 does all that while being the best tasting energy drink ever. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save 20% today. I'm so sure you're going to love Rev 7. For a limited time, you get our introductory 3-pack absolutely free. I drink Rev 7 every day, and I absolutely love it, and so will you.
Welcome back to the Sentinel Report. Folks, continuing with our coverage of the persecution of our brothers and sisters in the Lord in Nigeria and around the world. Obviously, things are changing rapidly. We're very grateful for Donald Trump's decision to make this a big issue, shine the light on this. And one of the main organizations that was involved in bringing this whole thing to public attention is, of course, Save the Persecuted Christians. They've been on the front lines of trying to shine the light on this terrible atrocities that are happening, not just in Nigeria, but around the world. We're very honored to have with us today Dede Laugesen. She is the president of Save the Persecuted Christians. Dede, thank you very much for joining us today. It's an honor and a pleasure to have you.
Alex, it's great to be here, always. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I want to start with the big news of Donald Trump designating Nigeria a country of particular concern. I believe you guys had a lot to do with that. You're doing very important work over there. So let's just start with the backdrop. We've been reporting on it here for years, but for the folks who haven't really been paying attention to what's going on in Nigeria, what has been happening there? What do Americans and Christians in particular need to know?
Well, Alex, what President Trump has taken note of is the persecution, the genocide of Christians happening across the Middle Belt section of Nigeria. Most people in America know about Boko Haram and ISWAP up in northern Nigeria, but for the last decade, since the Chibok girls were taken and all of that fiasco, the real violence has been happening in the Middle Belt caused by these ethnic Fulani militias that are herdsmen who come in with AK-47s and attack sleeping farming villages across the Middle Belt, which is predominantly Christian, and just maim and murder and slaughter and rape and pillage and burn these houses down, oftentimes with people inside of them, to make the subsistence farmers in these areas flee. And then they take over these villages and they rename them and they occupy them. And the Nigerian government does nothing to stop this.
It's absolutely horrific.
And that's what President Trump was saying, is that Nigeria, while it is fighting the terrorists up in the north, Boko Haram and ISWAP, and having some effect, they are also making appeasement with those terrorists and welcoming them, the repentant fighters, into the Nigerian army. So you have a lot of infiltration into the Nigerian military, and people just really are not trusting the security services in Nigeria any longer. Is Trump going to go in with guns a-blazing? I don't think so. He's not going to put American troops on the ground. And just this week, we've been in Washington, D.C. for the hearing that Chris Smith and the Africa Subcommittee at House Foreign Affairs held. And those meetings were preceded by visits by Nigerian government officials, including the National Security Advisor, Malam Ahmed Ribadu, who is really, truly, Alex, one of the bad guys who is supporting all of this going on in Nigeria.
So what do you think, Dede? The Nigerian government's what they said, at least publicly, was, oh, we're going to work on this and whatever. You don't think that's very credible, huh?
Nigeria's government is on a full-scale campaign to suppress information right now. Many people saw the priest who's standing in the graves and he's crying out from the grave sites on Facebook, calling for Western media and international attention to these massacres. His Facebook site has been taken down this week because the Nigerian government says he's threatening national security by coming forward with these stories. We have in our coalition Doug Burton, who has been working with us since 2019, and through the help of Equipping the Persecuted, also one of our coalition partners, they've set up a U.S. media outlet called truthnigeria.com. And they have reporters on the ground in Nigeria sending stories up with all the facts and everything you need to know. And these stories are not suppressed in Nigeria, so they're able to get the story out. And I think that's really why President Trump is acting now, because so many facts are being reported and documented in truthnigeria.com now.
Wow. So in an ideal world, Dede, what do you think should be happening here? What should the Nigerian government be doing? What should the U.S. government be doing? What should the church be doing? What should Christians around the world be doing about this persecution that's taking place in Nigeria?
Well, we need to recognize that what's happening in Nigeria is happening all the way across a 4,000-mile swath of northern Africa, from Niger, Mali, Benin, Nigeria, Burkina Faso, all the way over to the Horn of Africa, where in Sudan, it's their third genocide is fully in swing. El Fasher just last week was run over by the RSF, which is there's a civil war raging in Sudan, and the RSF is being supplied by the UAE, who very much wants to have a position in Sudan, at Port Sudan, and across the area. So there is jihad raging in Africa, and America and the West has not cared about this with the same concern as Ukraine and Israel, honestly, Alex, because the population is Black. And in America, there's a strong bias against Black Africans, even among the American Black population. So getting anybody to pay attention to what's happening to Black Africans, even if they're our brothers and sisters in Christ, is a very, very difficult thing to do. So first and foremost, churches should be on the calls with people in these countries. One of the first things Doug Burton did through our coalition was to arrange prayer calls with these communities, connecting churches in America with churches on the ground in Nigeria to pray for their safety. And that develops relationships. From those relationships, stories are told and the truth comes up and out. With regards to America and Donald Trump, we left Africa during his first term. We pulled out hard. We only have a presence in Djibouti and in small stations across the continent, but it's certainly nothing from which we would be able to launch any kind of assault on the jihadis that are raging. What really needs to happen is that the countries, the UAE, Qatar, Turkey, all of those that are funding and arming these jihadists across Africa and throughout the Middle Belt. That's really where Trump's clout is going to have some kind of impact, and I think he was doing that in Saudi Arabia just this week.
Wow, I mean, you're describing some U.S. allies as being implicated here in this mass murder of Christians. Turkey, of course, is the government there is a member of NATO. The UAE claims to be, very westernized, very pro-West. Qatar, of course, we've got a big military facility there. That's very, very troubling. What about the Christians in Nigeria and across this region? I know you guys have dealt with them. Some of your people have even been on the ground with them. What are they saying? What are they asking for? What do they want?
They want peace in their land. They want the government of Nigeria to do its job. But the government of Nigeria is actually profiting off of the terrorism. It's the military-industrial complex for which the U.S. has committed over $1 trillion to Nigeria for military weaponry. So hopefully all of that is going to get pulled back. They want security in their villages. They want the military and the police forces to respond when the alerts go out. 90% of the alerts that come into the security services are ignored, dismissed, and nobody ever attends to it. If the Nigerian government doesn't report on and make account for the people who are harmed in these attacks, then Western media never knows that it happened. What we're hearing happening in Nigeria is a very conservative number of those who have been killed, those who have been abducted, because most of those situations are not recorded officially by the Nigerian government. Kidnapping is way up in Nigeria because it is very lucrative. They are able to clear villages much faster and whole communities because they bankrupt the entire community with their ransom payments. These hostage camps where people are being held, Truth Nigeria is exposing, they've been doing it all year long, exposing that these hostage camps are often located in the forest near military installations. It's absurd to think that the Nigerian government doesn't know where these hostage camps are, and they're never raided, and the captives held there are never freed. We're also always calling on the Nigerian government to rescue Leah Sharibu, who was taken with over 100 other students in February of 2018. And the Nigerian government, we feel quite certain, knows where she is, but has done nothing to rescue her. There's been some 2,460 students taken since the Chibok girls were taken in 2014. What do the people on the ground in Nigeria want? They want their government to work for them and to defend them. But the Nigerian government is Muslim right now. It's supposed to be a Muslim president, a Christian vice president, but they chose to go with an all-Muslim ticket in this last election in 2024. And now you're seeing that the Nigerian government is heavily made up of Muslims in charge, and the Christians really, they're edged out, they're marginalized, and they have no say in their government.
Wow, it's just so sad. Dede, how can people learn more? How can people get involved with Save the Persecuted Christians? What's the website, and what can American Christians do in this horrible situation?
SaveThePersecutedChristians.org. We have lots of information up there and ways that you can contribute to help support the work of our coalition. We have over 200 members in our coalition who provide aid to persecuted Christians and report on and investigate their situation. We gather our voices together and strategize on ways that the U.S. government can hold the perpetrators accountable for their crimes and pass policy that will make it better for them where they're at.
Wow, fantastic. Dede Laugesen, thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you for sounding the alarm on this. I do hope that our viewers, our listeners will get involved, say a prayer for our brothers and sisters, and then try to do something. But Dede, thank you very much for joining us. Thanks for what you do, and I hope we can talk to you again very soon.
Thanks, Alex. Bye-bye.
Absolutely. God bless you. And that's all we have today on the show for you, ladies and gentlemen. We thank you so much for tuning in. We encourage you, don't just hear the news, listen to the news, watch the news, and get mad. Do something. Right? And that begins with going to libertysentinel.org, libertysentinel.org. If you're not yet signed up for our free newsletter, go do it now, libertysentinel.org. You're going to get 2 to 3 times a week all the critical information you need to keep yourself and your family safe, happy, healthy, and free, all at libertysentinel.org. And do get involved, folks, in whatever way God has called you to get involved, in whatever area God has placed you. We all have very important work to do. I'm Alex Newman. This is the Sentinel Report. We appreciate you more than you know. Until next time, thanks for watching. God bless you all.